This is the Starr Breakfast News. And coming up this morning, President Akufo-Addo announces imminent resumption of many of Ghana's stalled projects, crediting this progress to successful debt restructuring negotiations, which he describes as unprecedented.
Many of the projects stalled as a result of the debt negotiations will now resume.
Also coming up, aggrieved Gold Coast Fund customers express disappointment over what they say is the release of insufficient funds by government for their locked-up funds. And later, economist and research lead at GCB Capital, Courage Boti, hints government may not realize the over $8 billion savings expected from the debt restructuring agreement with Euro bond holders.
It's a positive sign, no doubt, that I'm not belaboring or belittling their achievement, but I'm trying to say that, the job is not done yet.
We've got details coming up right after this.
Starr News is coming to you live on Ultimate 106.9 FM in Kumasi, Empire 102.7 FM in Takrady, Zeps 95.9 FM in Zebila, Nissim 100.1 FM in Lamshao, My Star Radio in the USA. Also live on Facebook on Starr 103.5 FM and on starfm.com.gh around the world. This is Starr 103.5 FM. Starr News. Informed, in depth, in touch.
Many thanks to you for choosing Starr News. I am Nurein Abass. We begin the bulletin this morning. President Akufo-Addo has announced the imminent resumption of many of Ghana's stalled projects, crediting this progress to successful debt restructuring negotiations. Speaking at the Jubilee House during the presentation of credentials to 9 new diplomats, the president outlined the completion of domestic, external, bilateral, and commercial bondholder debt restructuring. These efforts have provided significant financial relief, including $4.4 billion in cash flow relief and the cancellation of $4.7 billion of debt. The restructuring is expected to reduce the domestic debt to GDP ratio to 55% by 2028, paving the way for renewed infrastructure and development initiatives crucial for the nation's progress. Starr News' Na Dede reports.
Speaking at the Jubilee House, President Akufo-Addo announced that several stalled projects across Ghana will soon resume following successful debt restructuring negotiations. He highlighted the completion of domestic, external, bilateral, and commercial bondholder debt restructuring, which collectively provided substantial financial reliefs and sets the stage for renewed infrastructural and development efforts.
Many of the projects stalled as a result of the debt negotiations will now resume. The conclusions of the negotiation have been highly satisfactory and to some extent unprecedented in the history of country debt restructuring.
And Akufo-Addo further emphasized the significance of the domestic debt restructuring, which achieved a high participation rate of almost 95%.
Coupon rates were reduced from 21% to some 9% on average, and maturities were extended, providing the government much needed breathing space and putting the domestic debt to GDP ratio on a clear downward trend. Overall, 203 billion cedis have been exchanged. This has helped ease the massive near-term local debt service burden, which was more than 40% of our tax revenue.
These measures, according to the president, will pave way for the IMF's approval of Ghana's second review of the fund program, resulting in an additional $360 million in support. President Akufo-Addo commended the Ministry of Finance for their efforts in seeing through the processes to reach the final point.
And that was a report by Starr News' Na Dede Tete. Now, economist and research lead at the Ghana or at GCB Capital, Courage Boti, has hinted that government may not realize the over $8 billion savings expected from the debt restructuring agreement with Eurobond holders. Now, the bondholders yesterday announced they had reached an agreement in principle to restructure bonds to the tune of $13.1 billion, including accepting a 37% haircut. But despite assertions by Finance Minister the agreement would bring savings of $8 billion to the country, Carriage Boti warns the projections may be premature. According to him, a repetition of the 90% participation rate recorded in the domestic debt exchange program on the foreign front means lesser savings.
We look to be getting there, but we would have to formalize all these. At this point, there are proposals that have been assented to. The fine test of the documentation would have to be agreed to by all parties, and we go ahead to exchange. In fact, we are doing these calculations, I believe, based on 13 billion outstanding. Will all investors tender their bonds, and will we get the total 13 billion tendered? If we don't have 13 billion tendered, we can't be talking about 8 billion. So at this point, there may be assumptions based on the value outstanding. But in the case of domestic restructuring, where we had 93%, 90%, some instances 87 or so percent success rate, it means that it could affect how much savings you are making in total. So it's a positive sign, no doubt, that I'm not belaboring or belittling their achievement, but I'm trying to say that, the job is not done yet.
You had economist and research lead at GCB Capital, Carriage Boti. This is still the Starr Breakfast News. Now, aggrieved Gold Coast Fund customers have expressed their disappointment about what they say is the release of insufficient funds by government for their locked-up funds. The Minister of Finance, Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam, speaking at a town hall meeting in the UK, announced a directive from President Akufo-Addo to disburse 1.5 billion cedis to customers to be completed between now and October. But reacting to the news, convener of the aggrieved Gold Coast Fund customers, Charles Nyami, says the funds release is disappointing and would meet imminent action from the aggrieved customers.
We have our platforms where we share information. In fact, they are highly disappointed in the government, because they least expect the government to come out to announce any payment aside the full payment of their locked-up funds. It has been 6 years now. Government is not paying interest on these locked-up funds. So we have already lost about 75% of our investment value, considering time value for money. And the least the government should do is to come out and pay it in full. So they are highly disappointed. I'm afraid that these customers are you'll hear from us very soon.
Now, still on this matter, following the banking sector cleanup exercise by government in 2017, many Ghanaians have become investment averse owing to loss of funds. With the recent exogenous occurrences such as COVID-19 and the geopolitical aggression in Ukraine by Russia, the Ghanaian economy once again finds itself in a downward spiral culminating into high cost of living, which deepens a distrust in the financial sector as government undertook debt restructuring in 2022, which heavily impacted local bondholders. The woes of the Ghanaian investors seem unending as 5 more financial institutions are bound to acute financial flow yet again, exacerbating the already fragile, stressed local investors. Calvin Powell sits with some affected persons and has come with the following report.
Our nation will work when the marginalized and vulnerable are catered for and treated with respect. Our elderly people will be recognized for their roles in building Ghana and assured of care in the dusk of their lives.
You are not showing respect to us. We have sent several letters and reminders. So you want to tell us that you've not received any reminder, you've not received any letter to this effect?
I brought the minister a letter last Friday. I brought the letter myself.
My problem with this whole thing is the destruction of the image of this nation, and something that is being done which will last for generations, because you don't solve your problems by sacrificing your aged. That's the last thing you should do, especially when you don't have any services that are specially geared at the comfort and the relief of the agency. I find this wicked, I find it disrespectful, I find it totally wrong, period.
Fail to plan for their retirement face significant hardships. But even those who diligently saved and invested are now finding themselves in a similar predicament, unfortunately.
And that was a report by Calvin Powell. We'll bring you the extended version in subsequent bulletins. Now, before we go, the National Council of Parent Teacher Association has backed calls for payments to share and support government in the payment of BECE and WASI registration fees, following government's huge indebtedness to the council and the recent release of 47.125 million cedis for the conduct of the Basic Education Certificate Examination. Stakeholders are pushing for broader consultation to allow parents to pay part of the registration fees. Speaking to Star News, PRO for the National Council of the Parent Teacher Association, Felicity Ahafianyo, charged government to outline a payment plan to enable parent support in the payment of these fees. We'll bring you this insert in subsequent bulletins. And that brings us to the end of the breakfast news this morning. When you log on to starfm.com.gh, you'll find more news updates there. I am Nurein Abass. Many thanks for your company.